Hello guys, this is part 93 of ASP.NET video series. In this session, we will discuss about logging user accounts. I strongly suggest to watch part 90, 91 and 92 before proceeding with this session. In this video, we will discuss about locking or disabling user account after repeated invalid attempts to logging. For example, if a user enter wrong username and password, he will be given another 3 chances to enter the correct password. After the 3 chances are elapsed, the account will be locked. After the account is locked, the user will not be able to log in even if he provides the correct username and password. In fact, most of the banking application does this for security reason. Let's look at it in action. Let's flip to Visual Studio. Actually, to support this functionality, we need to change the structure of TBL user table. Now, if you look at this table at the moment, it has got username, password, and email columns only. But then if we want to support the functionality, then we need to have additional columns like retry attempts. Where is the retry attempts? Here. Retry attempts is logged date time. So if you look at the retry attempt, here, this is of type integer. So we want to track the number of attempts the user has made to logging into the system, and then is logged whether if the account is logged or not. This is a bit type data type. This is a bit data type which is basically going to store 0 or 1. It will store 1 if the account is logged, otherwise it will be either 0 or null. And if the account is logged, what is the date and time? And if the account is logged, what is the date and time that the account is logged? So we need to store these 3 pieces of information as well. So I need these 3 columns, okay? But at the moment the table has these 3 columns. So the best way is to drop the table and recreate it. So I'm going to drop this table. So here is the table. So delete it. Okay. So we got rid of the TBL users tables. Let me go ahead and recreate this table using the script here. So come here and execute it. So command completed successfully. Refresh the table. So we got our table TBL user, and now run the query. Select star from TBL user table. Okay, so we got the 3 columns. Now since we have changed the structure of the table, registration page will break. So if I try to register a new user, for example, test means if I test 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 at the rate test.com and click register button, I get a runtime error. Look at the column name or number of supplied value does not match. Column name or number of supplied values does not match table definition. So what that means? It says the TBL user table has got so many columns. It says TBL users table has got so many columns now, but the number of value that you, but the number of value, but the number of values that you have supplied does not match, with the number of columns that we have. That is the error that we see here. That is the error that we see here. So to correct this, this page actually calls SP register user stored procedure. Okay, so let's correct the stored procedure. And to get the definition of the stored procedure and procedure, the easiest way is to use the system stored procedure SP underscore help text. So go to the SQL Server Management Studio, open new query, SP underscore help text, drag and drop the name of the stored procedure, means go to, and here is the stored procedure, paste it here and get rid of this square brackets. So run this query, execute it, and removed it here, and copy from here, or you may drag and drop it also. Okay, now TBL user table has got more than three columns. Okay, so but if you look at this table, these retry attempts is logged, and log date time, all these are nullable columns. Okay, so it is okay if you don't supply values for them when you insert a new row. At that point the value will be null. Okay, but then if you are only inserting values for specific number of columns, then in your insert statement, here, Then in your insert statement, you need to specify the column list. So let's go ahead and specify the column list. So these value that so these value so these value that we are passing in here are the values for columns, are the values for username column, value for username, password column, email column. So let's alter this stored procedure. So let's alter this stored procedure. So let me execute it. Command successful. Okay, so that should fix the registration page. So let me enter the details again. Let me enter the details again and click the register. So test, 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 and click register. So I am able to register. Now let's go back. Now let's go back and close this window. Select record from table TBL users. Execute it. So select the record from TBL users table. So I have this record, but look at retry attempts is logged and log date time. Those are null. Those are null because we have not supplied the values for them when we are registering the users, and it does not make sense to supply the values at the time of registrations. Okay, cool. So to support our functionality, the next thing that we have to do is have to write a stored procedure which will authenticate the users if they supply the correct username and password. But then if they enter an invalid username or wrong password, then we need to increment the try attempt if they are enter wrong password for more than 3 times. We want to log the account along with the date and time. That the account is locked. So we need to write a stored procedure to do that. Now I have a stored procedure to do that. If you look at here is the stored procedure. If you look at that, it is a little lengthy. It is a little lengthy stored procedure, but it is not really difficult to understand that. If you have followed the SQL Server video series, that we have discussed about how to use, how to basically write stored procedures and things like that. So please refer to SQL Server video tutorial if you are new to the stored procedure. Okay, obviously authenticate user. If you want to authenticate user, we need to pass it two piece of information. Okay, username and password, which are being passed in as input, which are being passed in as input parameters to the stored procedure. And then within the body of the stored procedure, there is quite a bit of code. Look at the body. There is a there is quite a bit of code, but it is very simple, easy to understand. So here we have three local variable. As you can see, the three local variables that we have declared within the stored procedure to keep track of some of the things that we are going to calculate. Okay, so this is account logged variable. This is account logged variable. Look at that. The first thing that I have to do whenever somebody passes a username and password for this stored procedure, if the account is already logged, we will not even bother, compose, compare, checking if there is a match for that username and password, because if the account is logged, the account is logged. He cannot do anything. The only thing that we can do is get his account unlocked. How to get the account unlocked, we will discuss about that in the next video session. So the first thing I'm checking here is into this variable, I'm getting the value of is logged. I'm getting the value of is logged for the given username. For the given username. Okay, so if the account is logged, if the value is 1, if the value is 1, that is a bit data type. That is a bit data type. So if the account is logged, then that will be equal to 1. If that is the case, I am selecting 1. I am selecting one as look at that. Every time we return something that goes to the .NET application or the caller in this format or the caller in this format. Is the account logged? Is the account logged? Is the user authenticated? How many retry attempts has he elapsed? Okay, so these three columns will be sent back to the application, and then the application will compute what to do depending on the values of these columns. Okay, so if it comes inside this, if the account is locked, we will give that output. Okay, if it come inside this, we will we will give that out. If the account is logged, we will give that output. That's it. The stored procedure ends. Okay. On the other hand, if the account is not logged, if the account is not logged, that is when it comes to the else block. That is when it's come to the else block. Okay. So if the account is not logged, then we need to take that username and password. That username and password, and see if there is a match. And how are we doing that? We are getting the count of the username. Here you can see the count of the username from TBL user table. You know, where username is equal to whatever username we are passing in, and whatever password we are passing in, we are comparing that username and password. We are comparing that username and password list that we have in table TBL users. Okay, so if there is a match, this variable, if there is a match, this variable will be 1. This variable will be 1. So if that variable is 1, we know that a match is found. So if we have found the match, then then what we then what we need to do, let's say, look at this update statement here. We are updating, we are resetting the retry attempts to 0. We are resetting the retry attempts to 0. Now let's say I entered the wrong password the first time, but next time, the second time, if I enter the correct password, then I reset the and that that then I reset the that retry attempts to 0. Okay, and then next what we do? So I enter a correct username and password. Now I return the output back to the user. Means if I run this, so I return this output back to the user. The account is not logged. The account is not logged. The user is authenticated. Retry attempt is obviously 0. Okay, but on the other hand, look at that. If the match is not found, then what we have to do? Here a bit of work that we have to do. If a match is not found, if a match is not found, then what we have to do? Here a bit of work that we have to do. Okay, we need to get the retry count. We need to get the retry count Here we need to get the retry count. Okay, so here we are using is null. So here we are using is null function again. Why do we use is null function? We have discussed about this in the SQL Server video series. Is null function. If that column value is null, if that column value is null, then it returns 0. Then it returns 0. Okay, so we are getting the values of retry attempts. Okay, so we are getting the value of retry attempts. Okay, and then we are incrementing that by 1. Why? Because user has entered an invalid username and password. So if the user is entering the invalid username and password for the first time, look at that first time the retry attempt will be null in the table, right? Means so retry attempt will be null if the user is entering the invalid username and password for the first time. The retry attempt will be null in the table, right? So it will be null in the table. If it is null, and if the user has entered the if the user has entered invalid wrong password or for the first time, then it will return 0. That it will return that then it will return 0. This is null function will return 0, and to 0 we are adding 1, and to 0 we are adding 1. Okay, and then retry count is less than or equal to 3. Retry count is less than or equal to 3. Then what we are doing? We are updating this user table with that variable. Means if retry count is less than or equal to 3, then what we are doing? We are updating this user table. Updating the user table with that value retry count. Okay, retry count. Okay, and then what we are doing? We are returning the message back. We are returning the message back to the user. We are returning the message back to the user. So if it is the first time he entered the wrong password, retry count will be 1. Retry count will be 1. If it is second time, look, it will be 2. Means if he entered the wrong password, retry count will be 1. If it is entered second time, it will be 2. But look at the account locked. It is 0. The account is not locked yet. The user is not authenticated. User is not authenticated. It is 0. But the retry count will be 1, 2, or 3, depending on which of the attempts you are making use of. Okay. On the other hand, look at that here match is not found. Here match is not found. Okay, and then if the retry count is less than or equal to 3, we keep on updating. If we keep on updating the table, and then we return the retry count, limit to the caller. Okay, but on the other hand, if the retry count is greater than 3, then what we want to do? We want to lock the account immediately. So we are setting is locked is equal to 1. Is locked is equal to 1. Setting is locked is equal to 1. On that TBL user table. And not only that, we are also updating the retry attempt. We are also updating the retry attempts, and we are also updating the logged data time, date time variable to the current date and time. We are using get date SQL Server function to do that. And finally, what we are doing, we are selecting one as account logged. And finally, what we are doing, we are selecting one as account logged, and retry attempt does not make any sense, because we are just locking the account. So we don't want to make use of retry attempts in the .NET application. So it is pretty simple stored procedure. It is just the logic that makes it a little complex. Okay, so let me go ahead and create that stored procedure. So go to create this stored procedure, execute it, command successful. Now what is left out? We need to invoke this stored procedure within the .NET application. So within .NET application, you have been following along this video series. In the logging button, click event handler. We have to invoke the logging button click. We have to invoke the authenticate user method. So this authenticate function now needs to support, need to invoke that stored procedure. And depending on what the stored procedure is returning back, we need to display the appropriate error message to the end user. Okay, so again, I have typed the method just to save the time. So go to the store notepad, and here is the login page. Oh no, we need to only copy this portion of coding and go to the button click event handler. Need to close this browser. Code behind. And here, okay. Again, most of it here is going to be .NET, edu.NET coding. Again, most of it here is going to be edu.NET code. Now, the first thing to notice here is the return type of the method. Return type is void now. So now this method is going to do everything, redirecting the user from the logging page and displaying appropriate error message. So obviously the first line here is reading. So obviously first line here is reading connection string. Actually this should be inside. Okay, correct, no problem here right now. So obviously I think I should keep it inside the remove from it from here and paste it here. Okay, so first line here is reading the connection string. Here the connection string from web.config file, creating SQL connection object, creating the SQL command, specifying the command type stored procedure. Obviously we want to encrypt and then send the password to the database for comparison. And we are using SHA1 SHA1, that is the hashing algorithm, and then we are creating two SQL parameter. SQL parameter objects, adding the parameter to the command object, open the connection, executing the reader. Okay, now why we are using execute reader here? Why we are using execute reader here? Because we are going to get a row of data. It is not a scalar value, it is going to be a row of data. I am using execute. So I am using execute scalar, and obviously while rdir dot read Now all this is basic, simple, straightforward edu.net code. If you have not watched the video series on edu.net, I would strongly encourage you to do so before continuing with this session. All right, so we are logging, so we are looping through, so we are looping through the reader. We are looping through the reader object, and look at that I am getting the retry, and look at that I am getting the retry attempt. Look at what we are getting back. We are getting 3 columns back. We are getting 3 columns back. Okay, we are getting 3 column backs. Yeah. And those 3 columns appear like this: account logged, authenticated, retry attempt. Those are the columns names. So what are we doing here? Retry attempts. We are converting that to integer. And then look at this, and look at this. If the first thing that we need to check is if the account is logged, there is nothing we can do. There is nothing we can do. We just display that message: account logged, please contact administrator. Okay, on the other hand, if that is not the case, if the account is not logged, if it is not true, if it is not true, then we coming to retry attempts. Okay, and we are already retrieving, and we are already retrieving retry attempts. If retry attempt is greater than 0, we already retrieving retry attempts, and if retry attempt is greater than 0, then what we are doing? Let's say we want to allow 4 chances. Let's say we want to allow 4 chances, including the first time. So from 4 we are subtracting retry attempts. Okay, so that will give us the give us the attempt lefts. And in the message we are displaying, in the label we are displaying a message: invalid username and password, and to that we are concatenating attempts left. It is 1, it will be 1. If it is 2, it will be 2. And then we are string, and then we are string is being appended to that numbers there, and displaying that number in the label control. Okay, on the other hand, if the retry attempt count is 0, means there is no impact on retry attempts. So we come and check whether if the user is authenticated. If the user is authenticated, if that value is true, if that value is true, then we are redirecting the user from logging page. We are redirecting the user from the logging page. Okay, and this is again the same as we have done in the previous session. Finally, if that's not true, finally if that is not true, then we are just displaying the message invalid username and password. Invalid username and password. Okay, actually that covers that. This is just in case. This is just in case if nothing matches up. Just as a safe blocker. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this with this change. But before that, we need to change the call in the logging button click. Within the logging button click, I can just call this method. Means here you need to copy and paste this method here. That's it. Actually, in this, we need to pass the values. Where are the username and password coming from? Those are coming from respective text boxes. So txt text username dot text txt text password dot text. You need to also use absolute for this also. Save the changes. Okay, okay, so that should solve that. Actually, in this authenticate user method, we don't really require this L blocks. In this authenticate user method, we don't need this else block. So we can get rid of this else block because we are already comparing, if retry attempt here is greater than 0, we are there actually specifying that message. Here we are specifying that message, invalid username and password. So I can get rid of that else block. We have got rid of that else blocks, and now let's go ahead and run this. So go to the logging and control F5. So we already have test user with test as the password. Let's try and enter test test. as the username, and I am entering an invalid password intentionally. If I enter password wrong password, invalid password intentionally, and click logging button, look at that invalid username and password. Three attempts left. Three attempts left. Let's look at the database table that should have been updated as well. So select star. So select star from TBL user table. Let's so now retry. So now retry attempt. Look at that, I elapsed one of my attempt. Okay, let me try it again. Invalid password. I click logging, means go back to your browser and again type invalid password. Look at that, two attempts left. Two attempts left. Now in the two attempts left, and now I select that, means go back to your SQL Server Studio and click this. So the retry attempt. Look at the time and time. I have used two of the attempts to log in, and look at is logged and logged date time. They are still null. They are still null. Now let's say I enter the correct username and password. I click login button. So go back to the browser, and this time pass the pass the correct password. So I am redirected to the logging page. So after two attempts, if I enter the correct username and password, the retry attempt should comes to back to 0. So let me execute that, means again execute it. So retry attempts comes to 0. Is logged and date time are the same. So let's go back and try, try, you know, three, maybe three times, enter wrong password. So go to the browser back, and I type wrong password third time. Type what we need to do here. We need to enter wrong password. Click. three more time, and again, and again. Wrong password I'm typing in. Look at that. Look at that, account logged. Please contact administrator. So now I come here, select the table TBL user here and execute it. I used my 4 attempts. The account is locked. That is the is logged. That is the date time. The account is logged. The account is logged. In the next video session, in the next video session, we will discuss about what are the options that are available to unlock the logged user account. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.